Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great Christmas holiday week and also a happy new year and are now ready again for the market in 2024. Now, since Bitcoin's price has more than doubled from under 20K per coin in the beginning of 2023 to over 44K a coin, and also since the SEC is planning to decide whether they will approve BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF this month, there has been so much optimism in the crypto space and seems like the optimism has already been priced in the Bitcoin price, along with stocks involved with Bitcoin, such as Coinbase and Hive Digital Technology. So I wanted to start this year sharing important insights and information on Bitcoin and the crypto market from one of the top leaders in the crypto space, Michael Vogel, who has founded the cryptocurrency exchange Netcoin in Canada and also founded CoinStream in the US, which is a virtual version of a Bitcoin ATM. Also, with Michael's passion and entrepreneurship, Michael has founded Encore Ventures as well. So, Michael, I really want to thank you very much again for being a guest on my channel. And I'm very excited to hear what you see in the crypto market and Bitcoin, especially in 2024.
Awesome. Great to be back, Andrew. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. Like we said last time, there's never a dull day in crypto world.
First of all, I think many investors that are watching this interview may have the same question in their mind and would be interested to hear, based on your experience, do you think that the Bitcoin rally we are seeing now is actually a start of another parabolic cycle? Or do you think it may just be a bull trap based on the expectation of the BlackRock spot Bitcoin ETF being approved by the SEC and can maybe have a huge pullback in the first half of 2024?
That's a great question. I think the average crypto trader is probably saying, I hope this is not the end. I hope we keep going up. But I heard you mention a good point at the beginning, whether or not the price of Bitcoin has already kind of baked in or taken into consideration the ETF and news. And I think we'll definitely see this first quarter in 2024 will be something to witness. I think definitely everyone at this point knows about the ETF. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a good rally that's been baked into the price. But I think the mechanics of what happens next with ETF approvals, how these ETFs go online, what kind of volumes they see, what kind of capital inflows, right? That's when it kind of gets down to the nitty gritty. Because Bitcoin is, it does have a substantial market cap, but I mean, it's very small compared to the entirety of the stock market, let's say, right? And so for these Bitcoin ETFs to actually acquire Bitcoin, they have to do that through open markets or, they have to find liquidity providers. And so we may see basically a shock to the system as these ETFs try to basically onboard and add Bitcoin to their portfolios. So we may see another wave going forward as volume increases and as traction takes hold for these ETFs. So yeah, on the one hand, 2023, definitely exuberance about what's coming, PayPal ETF and all this interesting news. 2024, we may see more of demand shock triggering the price to go up.
I actually have two questions based on what you just said. Are you saying that right now the price of the Bitcoin that is going up is based on the expectation that we will have a Bitcoin ETF approved? And you're saying that if that gets approved, there's going to be a much higher volume of assets coming into the crypto space. So we're going to even see a higher or a much more higher move on the Bitcoin price.
I believe so. So definitely on the retail side, the word's out, the secret's out. By the time someone's watching this video, maybe later in 2024, those ETFs may have already been approved. I think by all estimates, this is probably a foregone conclusion that we'll have some type of or multiple ETF products throughout 2024. And there's deadlines coming up in January and subsequent months of other ETFs that are in progress. But the general feeling is once one or two are approved, the SEC may actually just blanket approve all ETF applications at the same time and just create one single approval. We'll see what happens. And I guess dialing down to answer your question about each individual ETF, definitely the way ETF products work is, as buy orders and people come in to purchase stock in the ETF, it obviously has to be counterbalanced with actual Bitcoin holdings in reserve. And so if there is that demand shock to the system, then these ETFs will have to acquire Bitcoin. And like I said, they'll either have to buy it through open markets, Coinbase, Binance, etc., or through sort of whale traders or OTC providers. But regardless, the coins have to come from somewhere. And I think the latest stats show that through retail exchanges like Coinbase, it's really only kind of a few million of Bitcoins that are really free trading and available. So when Bitcoin's market cap is low, that's obviously a bit of a challenge. But as the price of Bitcoin goes up, it requires fewer Bitcoins per dollar, if that makes sense, to actually onboard this currency into the ETF.
And the other question that I had is, based on your experience, there has been a lot of attempts to launch or file a Bitcoin ETF in the past, but do you think that there is a high possibility that, on the 10th of January, the SEC will approve this Bitcoin ETF? Or in in 2024. If that's the case, is there a reason why you think this time or this year it's different and there might be a higher possibility that these Bitcoin ETFs might actually get approved?
There's definitely a consensus that enough time has passed. The general feeling is sort of enough is enough. There sort of aren't enough tangible reasons to delay an application further. If you were to ask, crypto analysts and those in the industry, the general feeling is probably somewhere around 90% likelihood of approval. But, as with anything government related, who knows? Right? The SEC has the ultimate choice as to whether it gets approved. Around the world, there are other ETF products. In Canada, for example, and other countries, there are smaller ETF products that are already in existence. And so for the SEC to deny kind of in the long term seems pretty unlikely. And an approval is definitely likely in either January or Q1 of 2024.
I hear a lot of people very positive on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies now. And, with the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF coming up, I think there's a lot of optimism, as I say. But as you may know, there are many well-known investors, like especially Warren Buffett, that still say negative things about Bitcoin and say it's a scam and it will eventually go to zero. But do you think, I'm pretty sure you do, but do you think Bitcoin is here to stay in the future? And if so, do you see the value of Bitcoin as the digital version of gold and only have a store of value? Or do you actually see some use cases for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies in the future? And have you experienced any of these actual use cases that you would love to share?
So for your first point about Bitcoin going to zero, there's two scenarios. One where Bitcoin, let's say, becomes hyper politicized. Bitcoin kind of has this negative narrative and falls out of favor. That could happen. That scenario would have to involve the same kind of scenario where, like, let's say Google or Apple fell out of favor, in my opinion, right? Because at this point, Bitcoin has been around for over a decade, and Bitcoin fundamentally itself hasn't been hacked. There have obviously been notable exchanges and fraudulent incidents, but Bitcoin itself robust and lasted this long. So I don't see any technical reason why it wouldn't survive. But yeah, it's obviously susceptible to political pressures and other pressures, as with any kind of new product. But I think in the long term, yeah, the most obvious use case for Bitcoin is definitely the store of value. If anyone wants to go on to a great website is coinmarketcap.com. You can look at the top 1,000 market cap of different coins. But yeah, it's important to note that in those top few, we have Bitcoin and Ethereum, but right up there is USDT as a stable coin. So yeah, I think those are here to stay. The actual price will be very interesting to see what happens, but I don't see them under kind of any imminent threat this year. The times can change. Definitely, if we kind of go full circle and look to BlackRock and these big Wall Street entrants, they're doing their own due diligence, and they're not going to put their name behind a product that is going to be legislated out of existence. So I think maybe about 5 to 10 years ago, there was definitely serious threat, right? A lot of people were wondering, hey, is Bitcoin going to be banned in my country this year? Will I just not be able to use Bitcoin? And that was a very valid concern. Even though there are active opponents of Bitcoin, I don't think those arguments have a lot of weight behind them, and think kind of as time goes on, those sort of naysayers will just have to kind of step aside. I'm not saying that regulation is a bad thing. Regulation is great. And, the SEC being involved in regulating an ETF product, that's great as well. But we have to look at being progressive in the long term. Bitcoin is a newer technology. We can kind of make some parallels with the internet being a newer technology, in the early 90s. If the internet had been overregulated in its early days, it wouldn't have been allowed to flourish. And the same argument can be made for Bitcoin. If it is or was overregulated, then it wouldn't be allowed to flourish. And so Bitcoin has so many positives around the world. Countries where they have issues with inflation and access to banking, Bitcoin is a very, very real and tangible alternative already being used today. So we've talked about Argentina as a prime example, other parts of Central America and around the world. Ukraine is another great example. Maybe they're not as commonplace as you might think, but there are definitely dedicated users that are employing the use of Bitcoin and stable coins. So its utility is definitely obvious to me in 2024, and I think it'll continue. The ETF is a way for people to be exposed to it without necessarily using it. And that's okay for some investors. They just want to kind of come along for the ride, but maybe they don't want to use it, or it doesn't apply to them in 2024. But as time goes on, those other use cases will start to come out, and we'll see other use cases with digital payments and whatnot. It feels like we're kind of at the end, the finish line. ETF is approved, and that's that. But I think this is just another step of many as we go down the road of cryptocurrency.
So based on the last parabolic cycles of Bitcoin, and especially with the Bitcoin halving event happening this year, would you be surprised if Bitcoin went over 6 digits per coin during this cycle? And I know it's really hard to predict,
Mhm.
but do you actually have an expectation on how high Bitcoin may go at the peak of this cycle if it happens?
The very interesting thing is, yeah, 2024 has two really big events happening, right? There's the ETF news, but then there's also the halving of Bitcoin supply. So the rate of Bitcoins being introduced into the ecosystem will be cut in half in 2024. So there's that and the ETF news. And traditionally or historically, that halving does have quite a profound impact on the price of Bitcoin. There's a bit of a lag, it doesn't happen right away, but it does happen. And if we look at the history of Bitcoin, going back to the beginning, we can see these events over time where there tends to be a halving kind of within a year or so. There is a major rally, and they tend to be correlated. There's an awareness, right? Like crypto traders have been through these cycles before, and they, just as you and I are talking about it, they're also aware of these patterns. So how profound that'll be, we can't say for sure, but we do know that mathematically there will be a diminished supply as a result of the halving. And so that'll have effects on crypto miners in terms of their rewards and how much they cash out. And depending on the market, they may hold on to their coins, and that may diminish the supply even further, right? Why sell your Bitcoin today if it's going to be worth twice as much tomorrow? So if we take that and then we couple that with the fact that these ETFs have to now procure supply for their ETFs, there'll definitely be this demand shock to the system. And so how does that unfold, right? So kind of going back to your question about where does that take us in terms of price? Well, if things do kind of spiral out of control, as we've seen with Bitcoin, there seems to be this environment where when it crashes hard, and when it goes. So that scenario in 2024 is definitely viable, right? When we see an excess of demand, those coins have to come from somewhere. Yeah, I think could we see some kind of exuberant bubble or rally with that hockey stick curve? Definitely. But I want to caution viewers, along the way, what tends to happen in previous rallies is there are these pauses.
I'm really interested to hear whether you take advantage of the cycle and, trade Bitcoin, or are you a long-term investor? Do you also invest in stocks that are related with Bitcoin, like, for example, Coinbase or Hive or, these stocks?
That rally isn't enough. And so they'll sell some of their Bitcoin or all of it and put it in another coin because that coin that went up 10,000% in the last month. That kind of stuff makes me not. Yeah, could we see Bitcoin reach six figures? So I have to decide whether I want to go on record in terms of prediction.